Hello, packages, parsers, and programs. We're back to AppSec Limericks this month. A user once chose to execute an MCP of quite good repute. They had it installed, then were quite appalled by how often it ran things as root. And so, this week, we talk with James Wickett about the impact of such quick adoption of agents on AppSec, from writing code to reviewing it. Download something and stay tuned for Application Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show to learn the latest tools and techniques to understand DevOps, applications, and the cloud. Your trusted source for the latest AppSec news. It's time for Application Security Weekly. Zero Trust is clearly the future as threats get faster, quieter, and harder to detect. But implementing it shouldn't disrupt the business. ThreatLocker enforces default deny and execution in a way that remains enterprise-ready, scalable, and operationally clean. Unknown software is stopped cold. Trusted apps stay contained, and drift is locked down across the environment. It's zero trust that works in real enterprises and prepares you for the threats ahead. See why CISOs are adopting it at securityweekly.com/threatlocker. Generative AI is powerful, but it comes with real risks, from prompt injection to data leakage misuse and agentic AI. The OWASP Gen AI Security Project unites a global community of expert practitioners who tackle these challenges every day. Together, they've built practical playbooks, adoption guides, and the OWASP Top 10 for LLMs, resources any team can apply right now to strengthen AI security. And it doesn't stop there. This is open source, built by practitioners, for practitioners, working together to secure generative AI. Visit securityweekly.com/OWASP to use the playbooks and join the effort to protect tomorrow's intelligence today. This is episode 372, recorded March 2nd, 2026. I'm your host, Mike Shima, and flying solo for a bit, but that's because we got a lot of fun things to talk to James with. But first, I got one announcement that we must all suffer through. RSAC 2026 will take place March 23rd to 26th in San Francisco. It's actually no suffering involved. Come hang out with me in San Francisco. To register using our discount code, visit securityweekly.com/RSAC26 and use the code 56U5SecWeekly. James is the CEO of Dry Run Security, where he and his team built a team of AI-powered contextual security agents that dry run, see what they did there, your code before it gets merged. Over his career, he's built application security programs, advanced DevSecOps practices, and helped organizations reimagine how security fits into fast-moving engineering environments. He's taught tons of professionals through his popular DevOps courses on LinkedIn Learning, and has delivered talks at leading conferences, including RSAC, mentioned before, OWASP, and South by Southwest. Hello, James. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Doing quite well, because I'm excited to talk about what the heck AI and LLMs are up to these days. You know, I think it's unavoidable that everybody's using them to write code. And of course, on the AppSec side, we're trying to figure out how much does it matter who wrote the code? Because it has to be reviewed, or at least I say has to, it should be reviewed. But this is where I want to talk to you about, because you're seeing a lot from the reviewing angle. So
Yeah.
what have you been seeing about just the types of flaws, the types of things that LLMs are whipping up these days when they try to submit a PR?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that as we consider like how LLMs are building applications, and we start thinking as you know, it's funny. Like you kind of back up and you're like, all right. In the old ways, when we built our programs, it was like I had a developer would work in a sprint of some amount of time, and then code would get shipped. Now it's like that same developer can run a team of 5 agents or 10 agents. And I was just on a call with one of my coworkers, and like, oh yeah, Claude had worked on this branch of something. I need to like go back to that and see if we can get that merged in or pulled in, right? But overnight, literally, these agents can get work done on your behalf, or while you're working with them during the daytime. And but now we're talking like a different amount of code velocity, a different amount of different amount of a scale of code that's going in, right? And so it actually becomes really hard for humans to review it. And I think that we do still see LLMs make, the classic OWASP type of stuff, some SQL injection and cross-site scripting. That certainly still happens, right? And I think we can all like sort of nod or understand that, like, okay, this happens because it's trained on other code and like that it's trying to build this up. Now, I don't see that as frequently. I see more like logic flaws, authorization issues, role-based stuff, enumeration issues. SSRF is coming back, and so we start seeing those types of flaws. And those are the same types of flaws a probabilistic system that we would know it as a human would have had a hard time creating. Another probabilistic system known as LLM also ends up creating. So this is where we're kind of stuck, right? Like, why would we can't really rely on a deterministic system to fix both probabilistic humans or probabilistic LLMs to understand like that risk that's coming in.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to have to apologies in advance to listeners who may have heard this joke before, but we for every October, right? We have this Security Awareness Month and secure code training for those probabilistic humans. And my joke is typically, why don't we just prompt the LLMs to write some code, comma, but make it secure, because we could shorten that October cybersecurity awareness into just a clause.
Yeah,
but it's. What's crazy is that
Mike, some of the advice we get on Reddit, or I see in like just in the world, it's like, but write it like secure, right? Or it's like that's okay, like that. It's hilarious to watch some of that unfold in the public, but sometimes that is the view of people. Like, if I would have just told it to write it secure, it would have done it, right? But that's not, of course, that's not the case. Yeah,
that's not the case, and people do make mistakes. And I think the point here that you were probably kind of leading off is that yes, cross-site scripting, SQL injection are still arising, but I want to argue that we've kind of solved those, and the fix there is adopt the framework.
Right.
We know, and so it's a little bit of the a weakness of the training, or that's what a code review that a human should pretty easily see. At least I hope this is a problem. The other ones, though, those logic flaws, authentication problems, I like those just from an AppSec flaw finding perspective, because they do take some creative thinking, or they're not so easy to, I'm just going to run grep or some fancy version of grep and find it. And that's why I'm curious too, because you've been finding that, but you've been finding that through some LLM-enabled processes as well. Tell us a little bit more about what that looks like, and how successful, or what are the gaps that you might still worry you?
Yeah. I think that whenever we at dry run security, we consider like, okay, how do we attack this problem from like a novel point of view, right? And I think that we essentially, kind of your point about grep or pattern matching or anything like that is a branch of application security that's been long running for decades now, right? But we really asked the question, if we were to restart over and to build a system from scratch, and we wanted it to act more like a human code reviewer, what would we do, right? And we would understand like the paths in the application, the authorization flows, the frameworks being used, what the authentication looks like. And so when we deliver our product to customers, I don't mean to make this like a product thing, but like when we deliver it as like we call it agents, but really it's a several, like we call it like a couple key agents, but there's basically a dozen or so sub agents that we're using multiple LLM models to be able to do this. Each agent has their model, or their in some cases like an SLM, like to be able to perform the task that they're suited to perform. And so kind of our planning agent sort of figures out what's going on with the code, where it's being, what changes are happening, and then delegates tasks inside of our system to do those kind of code reviews at that time. So it becomes really powerful whenever we're able to drive like multiple LLMs at the same problem set in parallel. And then there's some other downstream verification and exploitability type analysis we do to see to merge all those results together before presenting it back. But it does unlock the ability for us to look at things that you really could only find like via bug bounties or pen testing or other engagements in the past. And I know that other companies are doing this as well. This is not just bespoke or new to us, but we do think the way that we've built it really kind of gives it more accuracy. I think that as a industry, like we're now able to tackle like logic flaws, authorization issues, some of these things that have plagued us for many years. So I don't know. That's kind of like the framing I would put around it, Mike. It's like we're now able to do a whole bunch of new analysis that we weren't able to do before. What really surprised me was being able to do that against like older tooling, like kind of the last gen pattern matching stuff. And then even in like the classic, like a SQL injection case, or some like SSRF or some command injection, like I actually thought, okay, the older tools are going to be able to like carve off that, and then like these kind of new AI-based security tooling is going to take the new set of problems. It turns out even the new AI tooling actually bested a lot of the older stuff as well. And so that was really I didn't expect that to happen in our testing of that. So I don't know. We're seeing it's a really interesting time to be in the application security folks, so or in the industry. So.
Yes, and I do love the ambiguity of interesting times as well. For not a value judgment. There's an angle there of what you're describing. Yeah, that it's not just one LLM that's doing this. A lot of even writing code are these swarms or just teams or however whatever fun metaphor people want to throw together. Just saying this is how this swarm is reducing false positives, or I'll throw in hallucination because that's one of the things that we have to talk about, because developers just want to they want to be given something that's actionable and something that's true. So otherwise we're wasting their time just by having the LLM run overnight and give you stuff in the morning that oops, none of this was actually valid.
That's right.
Another gotcha here though is especially, and this is where I love that idea that we can do more of that logic analysis or auth bypasses, but those tend to be, call them patterns that cross that cross multiple files, or that need a larger context, and that's something that you can also get into. What's the context of what an LLM can keep in its window? By the same token, maybe humans can keep in their own minds as they're writing, as they're looking at this too. But how has that impacted what you've seen from just either here's a vuln that actually had a source and sync across multiple files, or lots of interactions, or some of that complexity? Does that still pose a challenge with what you're seeing in finding these flaws?
No, and Mike, I think that I don't know what got into me, but I was like, hey, let's try to sell to like as big of clients as we can. And so we've got into a couple of like large enterprises. So it's not even cross file, it's like cross repo now. And so it's like, okay, how do we make that happen? Right. And so we, so each of our sub agents have tool access, so they can go and do other exploratory, exploration type work if they need to. And we also have this concept where you sort of do a baseline analysis, and then that brings in a lot of context of what's going on in the application. And then all your differential, like merge requests and pull requests or branches or whatever, have the baseline, kind of the baseline context to be able to work with. And so you understand where authorization happens, authentications, all the like nuts and bolts of like how the application works and like what its intent to do is, and even like starts pulling out roles and user access type stuff. So it's really pretty slick on being able to start answering some of those questions on the differential code reviews, which I think that's the other crazy like thing that's been happening is like there used to be like I would check in some code, right? And if it's more than like 100 lines, like a friend of mine might say, or like one of my coworkers would be like, hey, that's a lot of code, like break that up or do something else, But now like we see these 1,000 lines, multi-files, tens of files being submitted. And so it's like so it was hard to get people to review your code, 3 years ago. And like, it's super hard now. Like no humans want to like look at that. They're like, that's not, does it run? Okay. It runs. Like, let's just merge it in. Right. And I know that feels scary for us as like security folks, but that is like how the world is starting to operate.
That's that's starting to get a little bit scary. But it leads me into one of the claims I like to make is that from the AppSec perspective, it shouldn't matter. So this is my wish. It shouldn't matter who or what created the code, whether it was a human or an LLM. It should be reviewed. If it has flaws, those flaws need to be discovered and fixed. But I'm curious, in the experience of what you've seen, understanding that there's maybe a bias just from, your observer, what you've observed, is there something meaningful difference that other than like the size of the PR between LLM created this, human created this, either in the type of security, type of architecture, just what is there a difference? Sorry, the short version of that question.
No, that's good. Yeah, and I think there's also that hybrid too, right? It's like a human working alongside of an LLM as they're kind of like working on code together. So there is that middle state. We don't believe in a difference between the two, at least from a like the way we do analysis and we think about it. But there is I'd say it depends, like, and maybe this gets become like a more of a business issue where it's like someone says, well, hey, look, we know that all the new code is being written by either AI or AI plus human, and so like we need that like differential like defensiveness, where we need to be able to do analysis on all the pull requests. But I still got a decade or two of like code laying around in GitHub or whatever, and I need to also figure out like what's going on over there, because I think the cost to exploit a kind of a novel or 0-day finding is like has lowered extensively. I'm not an expert in that level from the attacking side, but I know there's a lot of research, and you continue to just see like logically it makes sense. Like we're able to work on that. So there is still that fear of like, well, what do I already still have in my code base, and not just the new stuff that's creeping in. And so that's why we kind of needed to have the both and approach, both kind of the established baseline and then like establish the differential protection.
Yeah, I think part of a comment there too, even with Microsoft's Patch Tuesday decade plus ago, I know it's what, 20 plus years old now, security researchers were demonstrating you don't even need source code. You can just do binary analysis between here was the old version, here's the Patch Tuesday version, and now Wednesday morning rolls around and here's the exploit for it. Mm-hmm. So I bring that up as an example of identifying vulns, or has always been a theme. Perhaps now the exploitability has been democratized with a small d. It's easier for more people to create an exploit because LLMs have just seen so many examples of that exploit code. And I was going to set that up in that sense of talking a little bit about prompting. Now, I made that fun joke about, but make it secure.
Yeah.
But I'm curious what you have seen from either writing code side or reviewing the code. How fiddly, to use the technical term, are prompts? How much do you have to spend tweaking the natural language that you're feeding in, and how much that influences the quality of what you're getting back?
Yeah, you can. I've read comments of, well, like you don't need to really like worry about prompting at all. Just kind of like treat it whatever. Don't worry about their context window at all. Some people like I've seen some like papers showing that like doubling your prompt like adds extra accuracy there. I feel like it is the way customers, or the way people do this and at large is they will often like create it, and this is a changing thing because some people argue you don't need an agents.md file. So like, but a lot of folks will set up a Claude or agents.md file, and then that's how we share and kind of democratize our AI stack across the team. So we all have so it has knowledge of the system, and then we will read that and consider that as part of the analysis when our system comes in and looks at it. But then through that baseline ability, like we're also able to kind of set that same context around like what the application is doing and how it's functioning. So I don't know. I feel like that's kind of a non-answer to your question, Mike, because it's like I think like we all are using prompts aggressively, especially on the code generation side. I think being able to stuff your context window with like enough information on and give it some form of memory is like an important aspect of either doing code reviews or as it's like building out new parts of the application. I think that maybe one other like side comment that might be helpful on this is like writing code with AI like a one person to like many agents seems to work okay, right? But whenever you have many people and then also many agents, and you're all trying to work on the same code base, that's where you can get either in hallucinations, or you can kind of get into like or more of like a widespread hallucination situation. So that's something that we battle on our team as well.
Now, I think that does start to answer my question. I'm going to kind of re-ask it in a slightly different way,
Sure.
but go honestly into a little bit of almost the psychology of either writing code or secure review of code. And the reason I say that is so everybody's kind of excited about writing those agents.md files, writing the skills.md files to tell the LLMs what to do. How come we didn't start off 20 years ago with a humans.md file that just documents, hey, this is the code. These are the architecture decisions I made. Dear human who's also reading this, here are some trade-offs. Please work with that or give me feedback about should we reevaluate this trade-off. And so that's my setup. And then the question is, do you see developers actually just writing and appreciating documentation more rather than like writing code? Because there's been that cliche of everyone hates writing documentation, but they love writing code.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we end up start writing more spec files or system specifications or PRDs, and I see that's a continued growth there. Your point is well taken. Like I think we as an industry, we're always like, threat modeling. We get people to do some threat modeling, and threat model lives alongside the code. And there's always like this purist view of like how software could be like the most secure. And as you know, and like probably most of your audience knows, like when you do a threat model, it has very little to do with actual security and more of like how does like data work in the system. I mean, sure, it has stuff to do with security, but like a lot of times whenever I've done threat model exercises in the past, it's like people across the table are like, wait, that's how it works? Oh yeah, that's how it works. And it's like, the system had grown too big for people to really understand. And it really became less of a security concern of just like, we just was unaware of how it was all working. And I think the way now we've kind of distributed in microservices and like modern architectures, it's really tough for someone to like completely understand where, everything lives. And that ends up being something that lives alongside the code. Or we think that it could be a thing. It's also a really hard thing. Just maybe another like analogy for you or another thought for us is like, whenever you hire like a security consultant and they come in and like do a application security code review or maybe a pen test or something, like how much of that time actually is spent doing like exercising the vulnerabilities and like, putting that together versus like report writing or like discovery. And like, I'm going to put money that it's like somewhere between 60-70% on application discovery and understanding, and like 10% on report writing, and like very little amount of time actually is spent doing the exercising of the vulnerabilities or trying to like work on that, right? Because it's like a lot of it's just coming up to speed. So we're one of the things we do with our product is like we're helping some consultants use our product, and they're able to get like their 40 or 80 hour engagement down to 4 hours, 6 hours, something like that, right? It's because they don't have to do just that kind of manual discovery process and understand, okay, this talks to all these applications in this authorization framework or this authentication framework, and so it just really like starts like breaking that down for them.
Yeah, if it can accelerate, because I know I've done enough consulting or threat modeling of my own, and a lot of times I see people just explain the process as start with a data flow diagram. And I think you'll show up to a customer and say, please share your data flow diagrams? And then it's crickets because nobody has that, or it's not up to date, or it's not accurate. Okay. And I'm going to have to figure out when I talk about threat modeling now to throw in that I like the 4-question model. You've got 5 now. Like, oh wait, that's how it works. Yeah, is a wonderful reaction. I think that's a really good point. And I think what I would worry about these days is that, wait, that's how it works might become more prevalent because humans are not understanding or appreciating maybe the architecture or the design that the LLM is creating. And I'll say it doesn't matter what each line of code is, but it matters how it's interacting. And I'm trying to come up with a question there that's more of a comment than a question, so I apologize. I'm just curious. Yeah, what does that resonate just from, because you're describing using LLMs to write code. Do you still feel connected to the design? How does it feel to see some code be created by those LLMs?
Yeah, right. You end up thinking like, what is the purpose? Like, how do we think of ourselves as the creative agent inside of the system as we're trying to build it? And yeah, I think that's a reasonable thing to want to know what is our piece of it? How do we think of the application? How do we think of it for so a lot of the kind of the DevOps type principles of like how we're like putting more of like an architectural understanding of the system in place and sort of guiding our system to be built in a way that like both would be performant in scale and have security and just have all the aspects of things that we know that would be desirable inside of like our enterprise or our organizational structure. But yeah, it ends up being it ends up definitely being a gap of like not everybody, even the developer writing the code doesn't understand exactly what's going on with the application in many instances of using AI, much less can like the team be aware and more of a broader point of view. I think that there is a funny phenomenon that's happening in like well-documented languages and frameworks are kind of like having their day again, specifically Ruby on Rails. So like I'm an old school. I really liked Ruby back in the day, and my co-founder Ken Johnson, he wrote Rails Goat, and so we kind of originally bonded and became friends like 15 years ago over this Ruby and stuff. And so we were both like just laughing the other day, and we were like, man, Ruby on Rails is like it's back, like it's meaningful again, and why? It's because it's like super well documented. Like it's one of the and like it's easy for AI LLMs to like reason through and be able to build. So yeah, so if you've been waiting, if anybody in your audience has been waiting to like write some Rails, now's the time. Like Rails is ready to rock and roll because it's like it's structured for like how LLMs want to write software.
All right, let's bring back Rails. I will draw the line, however, at Perl. We don't need Perl to come back, even despite however documented it might be and however much I love regexes.
Yeah. But isn't Ruby just fancy Perl? You know, so
oh dear.
You're going to get some hate mail for that. So sorry.
It's enough for as much as I pick on Perl as it is. But I do want to squeeze in, because you talked about threat modeling, that's a very traditional type of AppSec task. Yeah. And we're talking about code review, security code review specifically. That's a traditional AppSec task. Yeah. But I also want to say, add the dimension of they also tend to be time consuming, both on the reviewer, and especially threat modeling can be time consuming for the developers and the AppSec side, or that, and I appreciate that you haven't said this, shift left, or just put the responsibility on the developers of go threat model yourself. I'm saying this to set up a question of, given what you've seen, do AppSec teams actually need to change kind of the tasks that they've always been doing because there are new controls or new security concerns of LLMs, or is it more of the same? They kind of just need to do things faster, or of course, option C, something else. And I'll leave it to you to figure out if something else might be.
Yeah. I think what I'm seeing from like a lot of high performing AppSec teams is that it is developers have had their AI moment. AppSec teams are still kind of waiting for theirs, and they're trying to figure out how that would be delivered. And so that is a task that like we're going to continue to like grow forward on. A lot of AppSec teams are taking like their code review systems, like their AI, maybe they use dry run or whatever, right? But like we have like people will plug in like their that into like a Claude skill or a Cursor, or set up a skill or an MCP, like be able to connect to those things. I loved your MCP joke at the top of the call here, but
thank you.
But I think like that is a application security needs to get in front of like this as best they can, but not as a way to be a blocker, but as a way to be like an enabler of like putting security into these tools as they're building, right? And so I feel like the shift left was always was correct in the I don't know, the philosophy of it, but like the actual execution of it never really like was great for developers. Like you never really felt like a developer was like, yay, we shifted left. Like my job is better, my life is better. Like it never felt that way, right? Right. And so, but I think now they can say that, right? As it's like the AI security tooling is interacting with the AI development tooling, and there's kind of this growing together, growing better. I do think there will also be a moment, I think, in organizations where where leadership or teams say, okay, what's our token budget for like how much we're going to spend on building this application? And then there's going to also be the question of like, well, what's the token budget for defending the application or securing the application or adding quality to the application? And so that day, I think is probably coming faster than we can think about it, or than that would normally make sense in our organizations. But depending on the type of application and space you're in, like you may say, I'm going to 5x my spend for developing on securing it, right, or 10x it, right, because that we know is really more important. And like engineering leadership, security leadership is now able to say, no, we really care about that application. We're going to prove it, not with just allocating like more headcount to it, but allocating like actual dollars to it or tokens or, yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole nother segment I would love to have about the idea of budget and costs of these.
Yeah.
But we don't have a token budget here on ASW, but we do have a time budget. And as we come to the end of this segment, I do have to squeeze this in because, James, we ask every guest this. We need you to describe AppSec in 3 words.
All right. I've been thinking about it. Vengeance under duress.
Oh my gosh, that might be one of my new favorite answers. I love it. Vengeance under duress. Well, James, thank you so much for bringing a smile to my face just for that alone. But thank you as well for all of the insights you gave us about code reviews, code security, and LLMs. We appreciate it.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
I want to thank everybody for joining us as well. We're going to take a quick break now and return with news of the week. Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full-stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software deployment and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/meter. METER. Welcome back to Application Security Weekly. We just talked with James Wickett about LLM-driven code generation and code review from a security angle, obviously. I'm your host, Mike Shima, and now I am here with Kalyani Pawar. Hey, Kalyani, it's good to see you.
Hey, Mike. It's nice to be back.
Good to have you back because we've got news. It's like there's AppSec news every week. It's almost like we anticipated this. But there's 2 articles this week that I really wanted to get your thoughts on and talk through with. One article is from Anthropic, titled "Making Frontier Cybersecurity Capabilities Available to Defenders." Now, this article is very much in the leaning towards the more marketing type of blog post. But the reason I wanted to grab it is that it's a callback to a previous article that we covered with John about 2 weeks ago, evaluating and mitigating the growing risk of LLM discovered 0 days, which really just means they wrote about finding 500 vulns. They were memory safety issues that they focused on. But looking at it, and even in that article, it was like, these are all, the examples they gave were string cat or some things that seemed very obvious that you would grep for. And so looking at like, hey, here's 500 vulns that we could have grepped for. And here is now an announcement that people are reacting to as the end of AppSec. There feels like there's a bit of a leap there between those two. So I'd love to get your perspective on that. Are we seeing a big leap? Is AppSec dead and this is going to be our last episode of ASW? Or do we have some more time ahead of us, Kalyani?
I definitely feel like we do have some time ahead of us. And I don't think this is the end of AppSec as it has been called. And I have seen the effect it has had on markets and startups. And I feel like why? Um, well, okay, so I know that Cloud Code has a security review command that they've been running for months. And this, like you said, it feels like a marketing article. And I know that there are people who are using the security review command as a whole replacement for our SAS scanners itself, potentially. And so maybe it is coming up with all these findings, but in AppSec, one of the things that we deal with day in, day out is prioritization. And I don't think that this tool is doing a great job at it. Sure, obviously we have discussion about the quality of output that the code is generating, but um, I think we, as AppSec, try to be a helping hand for developers to help them fix all the issues that they're going through for their product, right? Even if the scanner shows, say, maybe 100 results, are developers going to fix 100 results? You and I both know the reality. This is not the case. And so I feel like there are many other things that I also like. LLMs are like non-deterministic in nature, which makes me concerned slightly about the consistency of the results. Most of the SAS scanners we've had till date are very deterministic in nature, and so most of the findings are like pretty rule-based and consistent. And so I'm wondering, in the way that LLMs work, maybe there are some things that it will overlook, which could be potentially a problem. But yeah, I don't think this is the end of AppSec, long and short of it.
Yeah, and we had on the last point you made, we'd covered an article between Wiz and now I'm trying to remember what the other the other company was, but they basically pointed out that they ran some LLMs against essentially some CTF type code. Could it find the vulnerabilities? But one of the subtle things that I appreciated they wrote in that article was that they had to run the LLM 3 to 4 times in order to consistently find the vulnerability. Now, cost-wise, they're talking about that was maybe $10 worth of tokens that they were running. So not terrible, but it is still a difference between, did I run grep? And here I'm just using grep as the placeholder for, that call it old school type of SAST versus how did the LLM find it this time? One of the things I'll try, I do agree with you. One of the things I will try to represent, though, is I can concede that there would be an argument for those, nobody has the time to fix 100 vulns that are low risk, negligible risk, or, they aren't causing a crash and they can't be exploited. But I imagine there would be a claim that, well, if we know about those vulns, but we can give them to an LLM to spend the time and tokens on, and a human just has to say, oh, okay, yeah, I'll review it and merge that, that's a little bit better story. But even in Anthropic's original article about these 500 vulns, they were pointing out that they were manually reviewing and triaging all of the findings. They even had to go out and hire some, third-party consultants to do that. Now, I'll give them a little grain of salt in the sense of they were giving these to open source projects. They wanted to make sure that they were giving them quality information, but it didn't feel like it saved anybody time yet. And we don't know like what the list of 500 vulns were to be able to say, oh, this was actually really legit. This is something I would spend time on. Or to your point, I would have rejected this if my old school SAS had found this as well. So definitely a lot of ambiguity around, is the how much of a change this is.
It's funny you mentioned grep because I was just reading an article on LinkedIn earlier which said that they use Cloud Code to find vulns, and it took them 17 minutes and some 100K tokens to find vulns, whereas OpenGrep just used like 30 seconds to find the same vulns. And so, yeah, I think AI SAS definitely is coming into picture, but we're yet to see about the non-deterministic nature of LLMs.
Yeah, and we do. It's more of just also knowing our tools, because we just talked with James about some of the vulns that he is finding and team, and he was pointing out, I think correctly, that a lot of logic flaws, business logic, is the easy shorthand, or some authorization or authentication bypasses. Those tend to be harder to identify from a single pattern. You're not going to pattern match that. So before everyone writes in about saying grep can't find this, we know what we're trying to say. I think what you're trying to say as well is is this tool fit for purpose for what it's intended for? And
Yeah.
I want to use that as a segue to bring in a second article. This is from the Go programming language, the Go site, using Go fix to modernize Go code. Now, there is actually a little bit of an LLM reference here at the very end, but before that, this article in a way has nothing to do with LLMs. What Go fix does, and what they've improved in their latest 1.26 release of Go, is the language tooling can say, hey, you're using an old pattern or you're using an old style of code, we can automatically fix that for you. And it can do that because it's the compiler, it's the language tooling, it can build the AST. It says, oops, this kind of loop you created can be expressed more simply. So we're just going to rewrite that loop into something that's honestly more human readable, as well as more modern in terms of coding style. And I just love this. And it actually has, on paper, if you read through this, has nothing to do with application security. But I feel this is the type of language feature that has wonderful benefits for application security to keep a code base modern, which means it's readable for humans, which I think is important. And possibly it's also optimized. Compiler can interpret it and evaluate it better to either find bugs or just to have better performance out of it. So am I selling you on a case for AppSec here, even though there's the word application security doesn't even appear in this type of article?
You are definitely.
Okay.
One thing I definitely want to think about is with something like GoFix, I'm thinking about something like supply chain, which is getting hardened itself at the tooling layer itself. Essentially, like, it reduces fragmentation throughout the environment. You don't need more ad hoc scripts or like third party to look into what your supply chain looks like. So I like that, and I also like that it is deterministic in nature, which is not what most LLMs are. Deterministic. I want to call this deterministic is preferred over probability refactoring, if that's how I can call it. Yeah, and also, like, most of the LLM assisted changes are very much they're not predictable, and it feels like they are repeating patterns from the data that they've been trained on. So I like this about the GoFix idea.
Yeah, and one of the things that's also neat about this article is that GoFix has been around for a while, but they're also explaining that they're going to try to, or they will be expanding this into their Go Please, so that developers or organizations can write their own checkers within this to use this framework, so that they can say, here is the default half a dozen or so fixes that Go has to analyze code and say, use a loop in this way. This is the modern way to write a loop. Here's a better way. Here's a different way to do your if-else cascade of logic. Organizations can also build in their own style guides. So rather than just enforcing through a linter, they can enforce it through the language tooling itself, which is not even just lint and say, hey, please do make a change here. Lint and make the change for you, which I just think is a great thing to do. So I mostly just wanted to highlight this because I would love to see other languages adopt this type of thing. Back many ages ago, when I was writing a lot of C++ code, I would go back and rewrite some code as a lot of the C++ versions, like, what was it, C++ 17, C++ 21, 23, the different, as they were introducing newer ways to express different language, different ways of doing loops, different containers within the code. I enjoyed doing that, but now I'm just rambling about the past. This is refactoring that LLMs could do potentially, but not as well. But the other reason I wanted to tie LLMs into this is that they even make the statement that back in December 2024, quote, during the frenzied adoption of LLM coding assistants, we became aware that such tools tended, as they say, unsurprisingly, to produce Go code in a style similar to the mass of Go that it was trained on. Even, and this is the key part that stood out to me, even when there were newer, better ways to express the same idea. And so the point there is really that, yes, LLMs can generate code, it will compile, it will work, it will actually do what you wanted it to, but stylistically, it wasn't what the Go maintainers would encourage. And the reason that jumped out at me is that I still think code is written for humans to understand, to see what's going on, to appreciate. If you have cleaner, more modern style of code, I think that's a good thing. So I might be beating a dead horse by now. I might also be tilting at windmills, to use another aphorism, just about how much time we have left for humans caring about code. But this is why this article got me excited. So I don't know, is there anything else that stands out to you from this, or have we sort of exhausted this article, do you think?
I'm just happy that modernization is coming into play and reducing friction for us. I'm just happy about that.
Yeah, and I think I'm happy that there's still innovation going on within the tooling, in this case Go, that is improving the code quality. And when I say code quality, I'm thinking of AppSec, or just security in general, as a subset of that quality. So I would love to see this go into our other programming languages, whether it's Ruby on Rails, like we chatted a bit with James. Actually, that might have been off air, but anyway, I ramble. Kalyani, we're in March. We're getting ready for B-Sides SF here in San Francisco, and an RSA conference as well. Anything that there's fun around the either of those that you're looking forward to, or is there any way that people could come and find you, or just hang out and see you in person again, like they might have been able to last year?
I always look forward to B-Sides because that's where I meet most of my friends. People can always find me hanging out in the hallways. It's a bummer we don't have a panel this year, but I will be around hanging out at B-Sides. People can definitely find me on Saturday and some part of Sunday at B-Sides. I'm looking forward to all the fun RSA parties too. However, I feel like 4 days of RSA got me so burnt out last week. I was sleeping like a log for 3 days after. But yeah, I'm so excited to see all my friends again that I've made in this industry.
Good. So yeah, definitely go say hi to Kalyani on B-Sides, and then maybe the first 2 days of RSA before she's burnt out by the massive overload of people. So that's the lesson for today. But yeah, so hopefully people do reach out, come say hi. I will also come say hi and meet you in person, Kalyani. So thanks once again for joining virtually for another segment of news on AppSec Weekly. Want to say thank you to everyone who joined us. Please do remember to subscribe. As always, check out the show notes, share about us on the socials. And speaking of LLMs, acceleration, and code, check out Speed or Perish by Carpenter Brute. We'll see you next time on Application Security Weekly.